Hey, Good News family. This is Tana Heineman, the host of our Now What podcast. This is where we unpack Sunday's message and we talk about how to practically apply it to our everyday lives. I love that you're here with us, and I love that we get the opportunity to spend more time with our pastors and have them teach us even more what the Word has to say about our everyday lives. We learned from Jesus that one of the best ways to grow is in community together. So join us as we unpack Sunday's message. Hey, Good News family. It's so great to be back with you this week. One little precursor I want to say, it's been kind of a bit of an emotional few days around here for our church family. So if I look like I've been crying, you can blame Miss Bibb because she keeps talking about things that have been emotional and she keeps making me cry today. And Josh did it too. So you know what? We're going to move into something happier. It is a holiday week, so we all get an extra day off. But I was even thinking about how it's Independence Week, and I think, myself included, sometimes as Americans, I kind of take this holiday for granted.
Sure.
And then I look around our Good News family, and I picture, I just recognize and see where everyone is from, and that I really need to be grateful and celebrate and thank God for the country that I am in. And that we have this beautiful, beautiful, colorful picture in reality of heaven in our church family. So just celebrating America this week and celebrating our church family. So, and PJ, you actually kind of reminded us a little bit about how America's not always worth celebrating. And maybe right now we're a little bit of a hot mess. You mentioned that on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think every nation probably has similar stories. You know, nothing's perfect, so
maybe.
Well, I mean, in the our history,
Okay.
yeah, we have a checkered history for sure.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, PJ, we also have your lovely bride, who I also
That's
have,
right.
who have called Queen Mother. I'm sorry, I don't even know where this has come from.
I don't either.
But I can't shake it. You're the Queen Mother. I don't know if it's like some kind of weird alien movie or something that they call the Queen.
It feels
Mother.
good. It feels right.
Okay, good. But yeah, you're the Queen Mother, and that's what I'm going to call you. So thanks for being here, both of you guys, today.
Yeah.
Carissa, it's actually been quite a while since you've been on here with us, and you might remember that one of the things we like to do is some get-to-know-you questions, because we want our listeners to know you guys better, maybe to remember that we are fully human. We are fully in process. We love
in
Jesus,
process, for sure.
but we're not like, we have arrived. So, I just want us to be down to earth and real. So I have a couple questions for you guys today. You ready?
Okay, yep.
Okay. Describe yourself in 3 words.
You first.
I'll do one, and then you do one.
Okay.
Creative,
Passionate.
introvert,
Extrovert.
humorous.
I'm humorous.
Okay.
All
Hey,
right.
all right.
We got something the
something
same.
in common.
That's so good. I put my 3 words are social, emotional, because I'm always crying, and maybe it seems
That's true.
I know. I try not to. I just feel.
You do.
I'm a feeler, and I'm a teensy bit feisty.
I can be feisty.
Just a little bit. Just
Yeah.
a little bit. If Nate were here, he would roll his eyes at the teensy bit comment. But okay. What are 5 things that make you happy?
The
That's a lot.
beach.
That's one of mine.
I'm just going to go opposite, the mountains.
Sorry.
Do the mountains make you happier than the beach?
I think the
That's a
older
no.
I have gotten, it's a yes.
Really?
Because what are we going to do on the beach?
What are we
We're
going to
be
do
there
in the
for,
mountains?
For 30 minutes, and I'm like, it's hot.
Oh my
Read a book.
gosh,
You love to read
yeah.
I
books.
can read books in the mountains.
Drink water.
And drink water in the mountains.
Build
I
a
don't even know where
sandcastle.
that
You
came
cannot do that in the mountains. You'd have to build a
Build like
snow
a
castle.
snow
That's right, a
castle.
And it's
castle.
freezing and painful. 'Cause
Italy.
Your fingers literally freeze off.
Italy makes me happy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ooh.
Both
I
of you have
ditto.
really been life-changing. Italy was
Yeah.
life-changing
Man.
It
for
really
us.
so
was.
great.
Bucket
It was.
list.
Yeah.
Yep.
What else?
I love sports. I love my kids.
I love sports.
Family.
I'm glad your kids and family came after sports.
Yeah, these are not in
We're
a
working
particular
through it.
order.
We're
Okay, got
working
it.
through it. They're
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
as we get to know them a little bit better. But I love family. I love sports. I of course love my
Thank
wife.
you.
I love the Queen Mother.
The Queen Mother.
That is here today.
So foul.
I actually like being creative. I like creating things. So that goes along with the first 3 words.
Oh, yeah. I'm not that creative in that aspect, but yep, family, which kids are family. My husband
Your husband's family too.
Yeah, he's
you can just
fam-
knock out one with
Yeah,
both of those.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Family, the beach. I like to shop. I love to, which I know sounds shallow, but I love it. I love my pets.
I have that down too.
You do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really love people
Yeah.
too.
We love
People
good news.
I can
we love
laugh
helping
with.
people, and we love.
I like to watch aha
Yeah.
moments in people, like that. Like that's gonna start a shift, and that's
Yeah.
gonna. Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
There was one
That's
that happened this
awesome.
Sunday. We got an email that just said, came down, received prayer, and it was like they experienced the power of God and had to go to their knees. So I thought that was really cool.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, I think we've probably said 5 things.
Sure.
Probably in there somewhere or other. Okay, so let's move into Sunday's message. I really love how you clarified that the transformation process, it starts with our decision to surrender our life to Jesus, but then there's the process, I don't exactly remember how you said it, but like of our soul catching up to that decision.
Yep. So we get saved,
really
and our
good.
spirit is made alive.
That's it.
We're able to receive from the Lord things that maybe we didn't understand or couldn't access. We can now, but it doesn't mean that our soul has been renewed. And so a lot of the issues that we face in life are because we have holes, if you will, in our soul, issues, and working through those.
I feel like the church experience I grew up in, and I think it doesn't have to do with the church specifically. It has to do with, I think, that era in Christendom, if that's how you pronounce it. We spent a lot of time trying to speed up that process. Like, if I had a true faith experience, then I would have become.
Right.
And then we beat ourselves up because I haven't become yet. And that's why that has become one of my favorite words.
Right.
Because I love the recognition that it's process, and that God remembers that we are just dust. He is not putting us into this, box that says you need to have arrived by this moment or you're out. And we have tended to do that in
I
our
agree.
faith.
I think too, there's levels to God's revelation. So, I can ask my son at 22 something, and I ask my wife who's older something
You didn't say
similar.
the age.
Yeah, I
Good
did.
job.
Not by
Yeah.
much.
I've been married for a while.
Slightly.
Yeah.
So, but the level of understanding, we can only receive what we're able to comprehend, right? But as we continue, we progress, the deeper our understanding should go. So I think, Jesus presents this idea of if you'll commit to me and my teaching, and you hold to this, the truth will set you free.
Yeah, that's that John 8 verse that you mentioned. If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And you talked about the process, the progression of that. And we tend to get frustrated with the time lapse of that happening. And we need to focus on one step at a time. So like, how do you, if Jesus says, hold to my teaching, well, I can't do that. So
Right.
what does that look like practically? Hold to my teaching.
And we talk a lot about this. It is pursuit, not perfection.
Yeah.
And I think, too, we tend to focus on behavior modification. We want to see the behaviors change, and that's a fruit issue to a root issue. And so learning how to grow in maturity means that we're willing to stick with it until we become what we're learning. And that takes a while.
That's good.
She's thinking. I was like, you going to say something? Okay.
Nope, that's really good.
You also mentioned, like, right after you were talking about this process of holding to it, in that process, our thoughts are being renewed. We're applying what we're learning, and we carry hope through that. The more we know Jesus, the more hope we have in that process and in that journey. And you said this transformation cannot happen outside of God and us working together.
Right.
And like you said, behavior modification is not God and me working together. That is me
Right.
on this hamster wheel trying so hard. I love you, God. I'm so grateful for what you've done. I'm going to try to do everything in my power to be worth it.
Yeah.
And he's saying,
You're already worth it.
you're already worth it.
Yeah. I think, too, we talk a lot about this, and maybe the last number of years has probably been some of the greatest awareness and revelation and growth and maturity, but it's really coming to a place where you go, man, I'm aware of my issues or my shortcomings or my sin habits and patterns or where I came from. I see it, I recognize it, and almost coming to the end of yourself and going, God, I need you in this area. But then there is a progression. There's practices. You need help. You need somebody that you can talk to or see. And then you need tools. And so all of those things are part of the growth process. And I think sometimes we so desire to see that transformation story happen that we're trying to rush people into false maturity, and they don't have the character, they don't have the longevity of walking it out in order to sustain it. So we celebrate the immediate change, but it's not, I don't know what word to use, but it's not exciting, like watching paint dry,
Right.
to see character formed in a person.
Right. Well, yeah, we sit there, we can look at a tree and think it's so pretty, but I am not going to sit there and wait while the
And watch
apple
it,
grows.
yeah.
Like, not going to happen.
That's right.
All of a sudden I'll look and be like, oh, look there. It's blue. It's got apples on it, but I didn't sit there and watch it that whole time. And we tend to do that to ourselves. We tend to do it to people.
Right.
I mean, we've had that struggle even of how do you measure discipleship? How do you measure?
That's right.
Is what we're doing working? Are people's lives being changed? The length of time to get that research is really long.
It is.
So it's really hard to know, except for just let's stick to what we do know and what the Word of God says. And like you've even alluded to already, is some of those practices and principles we need to put into our life and biblical community and all of that. And then we're just going to watch the growth happen. But it's really hard to measure.
Yeah, and I had a couple of thoughts just while you were talking. The idea of we tend to fixate on methodologies, right? So that we can measure, so that we know where we are in standing, and it's more about the commitment level. When you were talking, it reminds me what, when we talk about discipleship, if we were to make it about football, the correlation, because you always
Big
bring it back to
surprise.
football.
Right.
I know.
Uh-huh.
So Bear Bryant had a quote, and
Who?
he was the coach for Alabama, Bear Bryant. He's an unknown. And he said, you don't have 70,000 people showing up for a chemistry test, right? But what is more important? I know in Nebraska it may not be, but chemistry is more important, big picture,
Yeah.
than football, right? And so we tend to get excited about those, somebody coming to the front at the altar, accepting Jesus, but when we get in the weeds and we get in the mess, that's where transformation really is happening. So it is exciting salvation, but walking people through it,
Yeah.
that's what matters.
Yeah. So sometimes we can hear messages like this, like on the Sermon on the Mount, where it's Jesus is basically telling us how we should act and what we should be doing. It's so counter to everything that we've always known, everything that maybe I was taught in my upbringing. It's hard to live out. So then we give up because we hear this should. But then remembering, like kind of how we've been talking, that God isn't expecting that perfection. He's just teaching us new ways of thinking. And then we have to undo the old ways of
That's
thinking
exactly right. Yep.
and rebuild
Right.
the new ways of thinking. Again, process
Right.
and time. So when Jesus is talking in this portion of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, he's telling us a different way to think and respond when we're mistreated. I sometimes would like to behave how I want to behave when I'm mistreated. So I can only imagine too, like that their world has got to be just like ours. And we think it's about me. It's about what I deserve or what's unfair. And if I don't retaliate or respond or defend, then you're getting away with
That's right. Yeah.
something. And I'm thinking, that's how I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's how they were thinking when they're hearing Jesus talk, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, again, we go back to the teachers and they were talking about their interpretations of the law, right? And so Jesus is trying to actually explain and teach what he meant, what God actually meant by the instituting of the law. And so he's unpacking it, and he's saying, you don't have to be the doormat. You don't have to be the one who doesn't respond or runs and hides. But here is the way you can go about that. So he's trying to give the heart behind it, and really like this new human ethic from heaven and how to respond to difficulty, because we're going to experience difficulty.
Which that right there is something we all have to hear and remember, that just because I have surrendered my life to Jesus does not mean I am no longer going to experience
No.
difficulty, because oftentimes, it's like the parable of the seeds, and like if we think we're not going to suffer, then when suffering comes, we bail. We're
Yeah.
out. We quit on God and on this whole faith idea or whatever,
Right.
because we think life should be perfect. But even tying it back to I think it was the first one or two messages we had in this series, where we're going through the blessed are, blessed are, blessed are. And it's the blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And you talked about the meekness it's humility with strength.
Right.
It's not the doormat, but
Right.
it's still humility with strength. So now Jesus is making it practical, and he's giving us tangible example of how you can live meekly, humbly,
Right.
with strength still, right?
Yeah.
So what are like some tangible examples that come to your mind of how we can live meekly, turn the other cheek, walk the first mile without complaining, and then actually volunteer a second mile? What are practical 2024 examples of how we would live that way?
I mean, we're married, and so
You are?
we are,
I
and
didn't
we
know.
have been for
By
almost 25 years.
God's grace.
Yeah, and that's right. And so let's use context for a minute. So Jesus is saying you don't have to respond in the same way, right? If somebody demeans you, you don't have to respond the same way in kind. This is what he's trying to get us to think a different way. So usually fights escalate because somebody is now returning fire, right? Bad day, react. Somebody's got to be the bigger person in that moment, not to go lower. Oh, you think you can go low? How about this right here, right? And that is how fights continue. And so he's just saying, hey, instead of resisting in the same way that they're coming at you, go about it in a different way. And so, I think as we've grown and matured, we recognize our patterns, or we recognize our habits. We also need to listen, which I'm not always great at. I go very factual in my head, and she's going, hey, I don't need you to fix it. I need you to listen.
Yeah.
That's why I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, is what I've been told. She didn't tell me. Other people have told me.
Scientists told him.
Scientists said that. I'm even thinking of shout out to my baby girl. She's grown, but Nate, when she was maybe in junior high, we could get into some pretty good discussions, and Nate would say, "Whoa, you're the adult, not the 7th grader in the conversation." And I'm like, "Oh, but I was really good and mouthy when I was in junior high. So if she's going to say something to me, I'll take you." Just like you said, I can get you right there. And then she'd get me, and then I'd get her right back. And he's like, you're the grown up. You're supposed to be responding humbly with strength.
Right.
And really, I've been processing since Sunday of just thinking about the things that actually kind of trigger us and make us want to retaliate. It's usually something that it triggers in us, something I need to prove. Otherwise,
Right.
if I didn't need to prove anything, you could say something dumb and it would just be like, okay, yeah, I can turn the other cheek on that one because I don't need to defend myself to you,
Right.
or I don't need to retaliate or prove anything. But there's something that it triggers in us, don't you think, that
I do.
makes us tempted to do that?
Yeah, and I think sometimes that is, I want to explain why. I think others experience real life. I mean, there's an issue there, or there is something nasty, or somebody is, there's some kind of vendetta or something. It's real. I think we live in church world. It's a little different. We probably are more sheltered in some ways. Most of our stuff maybe comes from hurting people in church, whereas in the real world it may be different. But the goal is, I think you're right, is that you're trying now to prove something, or you're going to react, or you're going to try to set them right, or just, I don't know, it's a primal thing in us. We want to respond. Yeah. It's our inner Denzel, as we talked about.
Yes. Everybody needs to know the Denzel. Do you know what? Actually, when you were saying that, I've come within like maybe 8 or 10 feet of him before. Like,
Where?
Yeah, I was in LA.
Now I'm finally talking.
My brother and sister-in-law were getting married, and she was having a bridal shower, and we were at this beautiful place in Beverly Hills. And as we were walking out, he was walking in, and my brother was like, "Look over there. Don't be that person, but just look over there." Looked over, made eye contact, walked away. I was very well behaved. Yeah.
I love
Man.
Denzel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Denzel, really.
So what would you tell somebody if they were experiencing in their job or mistreatment, or what would you tell them? How would you have them respond if maybe their boss or there's a coworker that has it out for them? And we heard about this recently when we went to have dinner with a couple, and she's trying to hold to Christian values, and there's some values that counter that. And she really feels the pressure of maybe not quite being silenced, but there is a lean to that. And she says, I'm not going to be quiet. But there's a way that you need to present that, right, with wisdom. But I like her stance. I'm not going to be nasty, but I'm going to stand for what I believe. So how would you respond to somebody out there who has real world experience, like with a job or a coworker? What would you say?
Are you asking Carissa?
No, I'm asking
No.
you.
Ask Carissa.
Everybody's situation is so different, so I don't think you can give like a blanket or formula answer. I think you have to listen to the specifics of what the situation is, because maybe God's trying to teach them wisdom, or I don't know. But I think it's hard to answer that question, actually.
I think remembering, first of all, if I'm a believer and I am working with a non-believing, whether it's coworker, manager, boss, somebody who's in authority over me, I do have to remember that I work from a different set of principles and values than they
That's
do.
good.
So there's an element of grace I have to give there. And then also, just like you said, Carissa, is I really need to be in tune with what the Holy Spirit wants me to do in that situation, because like we talked about, meekness and turning the other cheek or going the extra mile does not mean I have to be weak.
That's right.
And take everything. So there may be an aspect in my job in that scenario where I'm going to, without complaining, walk the extra mile, or actually walk the first mile, and then actually kindly, you know what, while I'm here, I'm going to just do the right thing. I'm going to walk the second mile and just plant seeds of kindness and grace in there. I do think I have to check myself, and I actually heard that on Sunday. I would have to check myself a little bit to make sure I wasn't walking the second mile to rub their face in it.
Right.
I have to check my attitude and make sure I'm like, trying to outdo them or something. So I'd have to be careful there. But then if the Lord is giving me space where I do get to have a voice and I can speak, then I'm going to have to, have that conversation. Again, you talked a little bit about towards the end of responding rather than reacting. So then I have to make sure that I'm processing through. Nate will often ask me, what's your goal in saying what you want to say? And making me actually have to articulate that to him so that I put myself in check and make sure I'm not just trying to make a point or prove that I'm right, but I'm actually trying to, arrive at an agreement or something.
And, it's funny, you're talking about that, and I'm thinking of Brian Regan, the comedian.
Okay.
All right. So, talk about the second mile. You see, you made me do it here, but look what I'm doing.
Yes.
I'm walking that second mile. I'm proving to you. I'm
Right.
showing you who I am. He tells a story of a 2 wisdom tooth story and a 4 wisdom tooth story. So he told some people at a party, I've got a 2 wisdom tooth story, and he said it was like somebody was going, I can't wait for you to finish because I got a 4, and
Yes.
he was going,
to one up.
you see?
Yeah.
You see the difference?
Yes.
2 and 4, 4, 2, you were 2, I'm 4.
Yes.
And I feel like we do the same thing in our
Yes.
Christianity. You see, I'm a
Yeah.
Christian. Look how, that
Yes.
second mile. Yeah.
It's really true. I mean, I felt that a little bit, or like the whole, if somebody takes your shirt or sues you for your shirt, give them your coat too, or whatever. And it's like, as long as I'm doing it with the right motive, again, there's that check there of making sure my goal, my motive.
I think the Lord is kind, though, because I know I've been in situations where maybe my motive wasn't.
Sure.
And yeah, it wasn't the purest intentions, but I know it still stung that person. Yes. No, I
You
mean,
see? That hurts, doesn't it?
I'm just saying I think the Lord is patient,
Yes.
you know.
And he can redeem my motive too, of
Yes.
like, if I meant to sting you, He's going to work on me for that, but you didn't even catch
Yeah.
it.
Full disclosure and honesty here. It's why I'm being restraining.
Yeah,
I'm
you
being
don't want to
meek.
say anything incriminating today. Talk a little bit about, I think we talked offline about the responding, not reacting. How can you be prepared in situations to respond and not react?
So I'll go here. One of the things I've really been learning is EHS, talks about it.
Emotionally
and
healthy spirituality,
Emotionally
for those who
healthy
don't know.
spirituality. Just about whenever you're in a situation or someone answers a certain way, ask yourself first, why does what they're saying bother me? What is it about me? So they really teach you to go inward before going outward. And so, again, I heard someone else say, instead of being furious, be curious. And so I really am finding myself going, why does that trigger me? Why does that bother me? What is it about me? Because I think that's the first place you have to start is actually identify what triggers you. If you don't know what triggers you or what gets you upset, you're never going to be able to practice ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's a long journey. I don't know what tools someone can just, muster up in the moment. I think really it's a long process of identifying who I am, what my strengths are, weaknesses, the whole self-awareness piece, and then going, man, I've got work to do in this area, and I need to know why, when someone responds that way, why does someone being passive aggressive bother me?
Because I'm aggressive, so that way there's no secret about it.
Yeah, because there's no honesty about it.
Just
It's
be honest about it. Don't be passive aggressive. Be aggressive.
Yeah.
Let's get somewhere.
Because then I can match it.
Right.
And then we could be best friends after because we'll go through the conflict.
Right.
But
You're learning something. You're
ladies
like, this is
and gentlemen,
dangerous.
brought to you by...
I felt like where this is headed.
I was going to say something. I don't know. This might be the wrong place to say it, but I was thinking while you were talking, another thing that I have learned over the years, and I notice myself saying it a lot when I'm trying to help people decide if a conversation is worth having or what the motive is behind it. As I've been practicing it, I'm trying to help other people. Like, I haven't arrived, but here's a couple things that I've learned and whatever. One of them is also you can't have a rational conversation with an irrational person or with a person who is in an irrational moment.
Yep.
Right.
So sometimes I just need to turn the other cheek. Like
Walk away.
they're saying irrational things, and I could sit here and argue back, but it's not doing any good. It's not drawing them any closer to Jesus or to me. And right now it's just better if I just kind of end this or redirect, or let's just pray really quick and
really
move on and let God deal. It's not my job always to bring the truth into the situation.
Right.
And I have to recognize that as well of
Right.
like, you know what? God can help show you, reveal things to you, just like he's kindly and patiently revealed things to me. It's not my job. So
I agree. I think one other thing, so we had talked about in the sermon, the idea of tension, right? That many of us are under tension a lot, whether it be relationship with God, relationship with others, relationship with ourselves. We're in pressure in our jobs, our families, or just issues. And so sometimes there are things that are not that big that become big simply because we're in tension. And so, I think that's where self-awareness comes in. Like Carissa said, why am I triggered? Why does this bother me? It may be a situational thing, or it may be something a little deeper within you. And I think you need to, discern that. And that's why spending time with the Lord matters. And it's why you go back with him and go, what is this? And maybe talk to somebody who is a little further in their walk with God, and just to get some wisdom. But listen, we're human. It's going to happen. I think some temperaments and personalities too, they're already right there. It doesn't take much. And then there are some that seem like, they're so calm and cool, and yet they go and they stew on it for, a month, right? And they bury it deep within them. So I just think this is part of being human.
let's go a little bit deeper then. Some of these are like interactions with people that are, you can figure it out. What about someone who's gone through something tough and they're hearing turn the other cheek, or walk the mile and then walk the extra mile? And I don't want to say what the harder is, but it's just, whatever comes to your mind. How do you help guide someone through that and how to respond in those more painful situations?
Yeah, so I think there's a difference between somebody who's being a jerk and trauma, that something is racist or it is blatantly, sexual trauma or physical trauma or something like that. I think those are different, and God does not, ask you to put up with that. I think the whole thing of resistance is actually setting the boundaries.
Yeah.
And so learning how to set boundaries, which takes time and maturity and maybe help from an outside person to go, here's the boundaries you need to set. I think the thing he's mostly talking about is in the context of an unfair situation, what Christian ethic are you going to bring to this to be able to handle it? Right? It's not a them issue, it's a you issue. How are you going to respond? What are you going to do? What will you choose to say or won't say? And I think if you find yourself and you have issues or trauma or triggers or all of this, it's a way to begin to, I need help, or and maybe go to somebody and talk to somebody. But not every situation that is difficult is a huge deal, if that makes sense. I know that kind of went maybe a little sideways. I think there's a difference between experiencing trauma and just, difficult personalities. And so I can't tell somebody how to handle the situation without knowing what they're experiencing. So as an individual, you've got to ask. And if you don't know, then you need to go to somebody and go, hey, help me out.
Yeah, that's good.
I keep thinking about a situation in my own life and where somebody has harmed me, and I have for decades asked the Lord, do I have permission to go face to face and readdress this situation? And then again, I hear Nate in my ear, what's my motivation? What's behind that? And it's like, well, I would love to get an apology. Or I would love to just be acknowledged that I was telling the truth for everybody who thought I was lying.
Right.
Those kind of things. Again, you hear in there, it's what I need or think I need or want. And over the years, the Lord just continues to take me back to let him heal those places. So he got me out of the situation, and I've removed myself from that situation so I can no longer be hurt by them. But he has not given me permission to go back seeking anything. Instead, he's saying, why don't you trust me? And I will heal the places where you feel like you want an apology, or you feel like you would do so much better if you were acknowledged for telling the truth. Right. And he's brought my husband, and he's brought me biblical community who knows and believes the truth, and supports me in that, so I don't need it from that person anymore. Is there still an element of absolutely, I would love to be able to have a moment, but he hasn't given permission for that. And if he never does, that's okay. And I think that's some of that is where we have to choose at those times that I am going to turn the other cheek. And it's not out of weakness by any means.
Right.
I, in strength, made decisions to walk away from different people, relationships, or whatever, to walk away and create something new for my life and allow God to be in charge. And I think that's what people also need to hear, is you don't have to stay in a bad situation. Right. And you can show strength with humility, with even a hint of respect. I could go badmouth this person to everybody and shout it from the rooftops, but I don't need to.
Right.
God is my defender. And if there's a lot of people who never know the truth of the situation, I've had to grow to be okay with that, because God is my defender. Yep. And God has given me a new name. And that the old Tana is no longer the Tana that you see here. So as we allow God to heal us, and God, it's really tying into, you and I keep talking about identity, and it's a big project we're in, but the more I know who God is and who I am because of it, I no longer need to feel the need to defend myself or defend my name, and I can let him do it and walk away from those kind of things.
Yeah. I do think, so we're wired for justice. When somebody wrongs us or we see something that is wrong, we feel within us, because the foundations of God's throne, righteousness and justice, right? So there's this sense of, wired into us, is sense of justice. But the issue is we probably, in many instances, may not see justice. So how do we handle when we've been wronged? And it's going to come to your doorstep.
Yep.
You don't have to go looking for it. It's
Yep.
going to happen. And so when we went through COVID and all of those things, there were so many criticisms of leadership. And I remember just being suffocated. Now, there's two things that the Lord showed me, and I'm trying to still grow in those things. First, pride. So God's tool for a pastor a lot of times is criticism because of pride. So it's a way of both dealing with it and trying to free. Because, I mean, all I can be is who I am. And I'm never going to please everybody. Jesus did not please everybody. And so learning how to find your identity in Christ, and then learning how to release the person or the thing that is said, that takes time and work. So it may not be words for somebody else. It may be an action, or it may be a family thing, or it may be where you come from, or trauma, or whatever it is. But learning how to meet with the Lord is the key. If our win is outside of us, that may never come. The apology may never come.
Right.
So then we have to meet with the Lord and go, Lord, what do I do with this? How do you meet me in this? How do you get up under the thing? And I'm just learning, like I said in the message, I'm just learning how to sit with the Lord, because he is the one that brings the transformation. There's only so much I can do. My job is to connect with him, bring it to him, lean into him, but he has to bring the transformation. And oftentimes he'll bring stuff out of me. And that's a place where I confess it, or I ask for forgiveness, or I ask for help. But it is not a quick process, but it's learning how to lean into the Lord in those areas.
And I just want to, clarify. That doesn't mean that you are not doing anything, because you'll sit with the Lord, but then he allows you to be in a situation where you can actually put that into practice. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, like, you have to actually put feet to that. Like praying for patience. Like you could sit and he could download it, and he will, and that's part of transformation. The other part is putting you behind slow drivers, right? To practice that thing.
Hold to my truth.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, it's the both and. It is sitting with the Lord and leaning, but then expect that you're going to have to bear fruit from it.
Yep.
And that won't happen just sitting on your couch and communing with him. So hopefully that, there's the active part of, it's the spiritual and the practical.
I think the thing, like, there is a dynamic of expression. There's a dynamic of what God must give you. If we are to remain in the vine gives us what we need. And so there is this, right, you're going to be tested. That's part of the maturity and growing up. And I don't even know if it's a test as much as it's just life.
Yeah.
And then you can begin to discover for yourself this active resistance that is not demeaning to the person or to you. I can actually resist what you're doing to me in order to be fully who God has created me to be. And that it takes time to learn it, but there's a work that happens internally, and then there's a work that we have to walk out.
Yeah. And really highlighting to that whole process and journey of it, of as God is teaching us how to be more like him, we're not going to get it right the first time or the first 100 times. And I think of one of my mentors talking about the spiral staircase, and you think, haven't I already been in this room? Why am I still coming back to this room? Yeah, but look, you're seeing this room again, but you're another level higher, and then you're another level higher. Like, you're getting better and better at allowing God to work through you, and the outcome is different each time you go around. Sometimes we would just like to just get
Take
up,
an elevator.
just take an elevator.
Come
yes,
on.
really, yes. The spiral staircase, sometimes I'm like, good Lord,
Yeah.
how many times do I have to revisit? I thought we were done with this. And I think God also, in his kindness, reminds me of my humanity and how much I need him. And don't get a little too full of yourself, like you haven't fully arrived.
Yeah.
None of us have fully arrived. As we start to wrap up, you wrapped up the message with the paralytic man who had been paralyzed and sitting there by the pool, I think, for 38 years. It
Yes.
was in John
Five.
chapter 5. And you use that story to kind of help us maybe learn how to sit and process with God for our healing, freedom, and breakthrough, right?
Yes.
It's kind of the purpose.
Mhm.
Okay, so you said, basically Jesus is talking, he comes up to the man and he says to him, do you want to get well? And if I heard you correctly, you were saying that is a question that Jesus is asking me in
Right.
these areas. Do I want to get well, be whole, find freedom? And he expects me to answer the question.
But what was his response?
And the man's response was excuses.
Yeah. Somebody gets down in front of me. There's nobody to help me. Everything is outside. That wasn't the question. And so in regard to what we experience or what we go through, he's just going, okay, let's be honest. Do you want to get well?
Yeah. Because then I have to ask myself, so what excuses am I making for why I'm not well?
Right.
And then maybe who am I blaming? Saying that, they're in my way, they're preventing me. Well, it's because they did this to me or they did that to me. And that causes me to then continue in frustration and tension like the Coke can, because I keep putting all these outside excuses and, well, you know what, let's set all that free and let's just me and Jesus deal with, do I want to be well?
And I think the other thing, when you look at it, the man only has one idea of healing. Jesus is trying to present a different way to be healed. He's trying to go, I see that you want it this way, but what I'm offering is I want to know that you want to be healed, and there's a different way to be healed. So sometimes we're thinking out there, if they'll apologize
Right.
or they'll do this, and God, but do you want to be free? Then let me bring healing to you.
Absolutely.
And I equate it to sometimes people pray for physical healing, which we should. But a lot of times, and it was a podcast I was listening to, where basically the premise was she was asking the question, but what if he wants to heal you emotionally and you never see the physical healing from it? Do you want to be well? Which it's a profound, because we want, we want the quick, easy thing, but it just takes work,
Yeah, you also, you said as you were wrapping up that section about the paralytic, you said we also have to kind of wrestle out, what will it look like when I am healed? And the man, this is all he's known, is being this guy with these excuses. I kind of equate it, give me grace in this, but it's like kind of a little bit victim. Well, I've always been here. They get in front of me. They did
Right.
whatever. Now Jesus is saying, no, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to be everything you need. But then there's but will you? Because then I have to change who I've always believed myself to be. How I've always functioned with other people is now different, because I'm no longer
That's right.
paralyzed. I'm no longer weak or emotionally broken. I'm whole. Now you're going to probably expect something out of me. I'm
Yep.
not the guy stuck by the pool every day.
That
Now
somebody's
I'm up.
got to bring me
Yeah.
on a mat. Now there's expectations on me.
Yeah.
There's new relationship expectations on me. There's new dynamics that he's going to face. He's going to have to get a job. He's all of these things now because of healing.
And a responsibility I now have to never forget I was that guy. Now I'm this guy. I need to tell you about it so you can get to know the guy who brought me to this place. Like, there is a responsibility. And sometimes, I'm sad to say, sometimes we decide,
Maybe easier to stay.
might just be easier to just stay right here. This is how I've always identified.
Yeah.
This is who I've always been. I love that you went there on Sunday, because we've got to wrestle that out. And
I think they say that one of the number one reasons why people won't go or stick with therapy, because like really going to a counselor is hard work. And even to the point, people will joke around, like after therapy sessions, they actually feel worse because you're digging so deep. It's like going to physical therapy after knee surgery. It hurts.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we joke around about, not we in this context, but it's hard work.
It is.
To get better.
And even like, will I have to forgive someone? if I allow you to bring me healing, I don't want to have to forget. I don't want to have to turn the other cheek. Well, then you can either stay here bound up, or you can face this, forgive them. Doesn't mean you have to be in a relationship. Doesn't mean you have to go and be friends again. But you do have to forgive them and let them go and let me handle them. Trust me that I can handle them so that you can walk in healing. And that is an element of turning the other cheek or going the extra mile or giving somebody my shirt and my coat who doesn't deserve it at all, but that is part of that process.
I want to say one thing before we close too. I think our picture of what Jesus is like and what God is like in asking matters, because depending on how you view God, it may almost feel like a demand, almost like, well, come on, do you really want to be made well, or are you just going to lay there on the mat? I think Jesus is being really kind. I think he's trying to meet this man where he is. He's trying to meet him and show him that there is another way. You feel trapped, not just emotionally or physically or in context of getting into the water, but in a lot of different ways. This is all you know. I'm trying to show you something different. And I think Jesus is just really kind. And sometimes we present it like all these things, these hoops we're going to jump through, and it is stinking hard work. But Jesus is going to walk us through every one of those scenarios because he wants us to be more like him, but also the process of healing. He wants us free. And so I want people to know that Jesus is really kind, and he'll lead us through that with kindness.
That's a really, really good point. See, my little aggressive personality can go to the hard side rather than the kindness side of even he's okay with us being in process. He wasn't mad at the man for saying his excuses. He loved him enough to kind of push back and challenge that, like a father would challenge and try to bring out of their child, the truth or
And
whatever.
even when you think about the context, he heard from somebody. That guy's been there for 38 years. So you almost get this sense of God going, that can't stay that way. So that's the kindness of God coming to us and going, I know it's been a long time, but I want to try to meet you in that.
It's really good. I just want to wrap it up with the process of the transformation habits that you were talking about. And so really, to work through the types of questions we're talking about today, we have to make space to sit with him, to ask, to listen, to process, and not keep anything off limits to the Lord. Let him be honest with him and our feelings so that we can know him and allow him to do work so we can find freedom. And so you talked about just basic questions of saying, of asking, like, what is God saying to me through this message? We all know if we're listening to this message and there's a place in there, he's bringing it up when we're listening to it. You can't deny it. That's the kindness of God to do that. What am I feeling or thinking in my heart and my mind as I listen to the message, as I listen to this podcast? What is the wrestle that's going on, the tension that I'm feeling? And then sit and listen and let the Lord just kind of start to bring, it's not an audible voice, right? It's thoughts that come to our mind. It's things he kind of like downloads that I've never really thought about it that way before. That's the Holy Spirit speaking to you in
and
that
sometimes
moment.
it'll be something that'll just come up, like something that happened, or and he's bringing this stuff up as well.
And then finding that mature believer that you can process with. That is why we are so passionate about everyone getting into biblical community, because we need people to process this with, and then we need people to kind of help keep us accountable to it in a good way, of like, hey, Carissa, I need you to check in with me next week and say, what have you done about it? Have you, where have we gone? What steps have you taken so that we can actually implement new actions and bring change and transformation?
That's right.
So I love that. Is there any extra thoughts or things that you would like to say as we close?
Queen Mother?
No? We said it all? We got it done?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I stay committed. Jesus really loves you and believes in you, and it believes that he can bring healing and transformation into your life. And so, I don't know, be committed to get off the mat.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I tell you guys this all the time, but I really love this time with you every single week. So thank you for being a faithful listener. Thank you for really, I don't know about you, but each time we chew through a message, we get more out of it. So it's like if I heard it on Sunday and then I'm listening to the podcast and then I might be in a life group where we're kind of talking about it a little bit more. Some people think that's redundant. I think that's just growth. It's because we need to hear things several times and different people's way that they heard it and process and whatever. So I love that you're always faithfully here. Tell someone else about the podcast. Maybe you know somebody who would love to hear these Sermon on the Mount series discussions. We'll invite them to come listen to the podcast. And remember, if you have anything you want to ask us or say, or you got a good question you want to know about the pastors, you can always email us at podcast@goodnews.church. And we just might ask that question with no warning, put you right on the spot. Otherwise, you guys have a great holiday week. We love you, and we'll chat again next time. Thanks again for joining us today. We would love for you to tell others about the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it too, because this will help others find out about it. If you missed it before, we love to hear from you. So if you have any stories to tell about how the message impacted you, or maybe you have a question or comment, make sure you email us at podcast@goodnews.church. Y'all, this is my favorite day of the week. So go give away what you just learned, and we'll chat again next time.